Good morning. My name is Gerhartz, and I'm a postdoc philosopher slash classical philologist at RTU Kaiserslautern, specializing in narrative ethics and the philosophy of history, art, nature, and technology. I want to start by saying that it's an absolute pleasure to be here in Heidelberg today and contribute to this first ever conference on all things Warhammer. For me, this is a bit coming full circle because it was Killer Robots, Space Crusades, Operation Dreadnought that brought me into the game some 25 years ago during third edition. What kept my interest to this day, though, is the premise of a dystopian sci-fi setting so far into the future that every catastrophe possible has already happened at some point. It is, in fact, the worst of all possible worlds. But as fiction, this nightmarish combination of Nietzsche's ewiger Wiederkunft and Murphy's Law, for which the organizers have coined the term post-apocalyptic, is actually an ethicist's dream come true, for it allows us to tell stories about the problems of our own time, yet magnified to such an epic scale of horrific future consequences that may even make us take up responsibility for our actions in the now. One of these problems, most perfidiously, is omnipresent and at the same time almost invisible. Technology. Like the glasses worn on our noses that we ever so often forget about, has become such an integral part of our life world that it is considered part of human nature. Thus, taken for granted, we stopped asking questions, even failed to see a problem at all, let alone understand how we came to depend so much on our own creation. Like all science fiction, technology too pervades the Warhammer universe, exemplified by the anointed keepers of all knowledge and devout servants to the machine god of Mars, the tech priests of the cult Mechanicus, which shall be the focus of my presentation today. As the mirror to reflect upon and analyze the problem of grimdark future technology, I chose a philosophical theory that is as fundamental as it is controversial. Martin Heidegger's critique of technology as expressed in his essay Die Frage nach der Technik of 1954. For the non-philosophers among us, this might need some words of introduction. Martin Heidegger is considered to be one of the most important and influential philosophers of the 20th century, having inspired thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Hannah Arendt, and Hans Jonas. But besides his often eccentric terminology, it is in his involvement with the German Nazi Party that merits criticism, further incited by his only posthumously published Black Notebooks. This background in real historical fascism is something we should keep in mind when applying his philosophy to the fictional parody of a fascist superstate that is the imperium of man. Heidegger is better known for his fundamental ontology he develops in his early work Sein und Zeit, being in time of 1927. It is fundamental in that it tackles a blind spot of the traditional philosophical question about being itself, German Sein, the on of ontology. Why is there anything and not nothing? By asking for the meaning, German Sinn, as the fundament of that being or essence. He finds that existence, or Dasein, concrete being in the world, caring about and reflecting upon itself, precedes abstract metaphysical essence, the latter being just something we invented later to make sense of the world we always already find ourselves thrown into. So in short, we define our own being through our actions, choices, and most importantly, the way we choose to look at the world and ourselves. In his later works, during and after Nazi reign, Heidegger begins to conduct a turn or kehre away from metaphysics, which he with Nietzsche identifies as an empty vehicle of nihilism, and towards an alternative poetic dwelling in the world as a salvation from this instrumental reason. The question for technology question concerning technology, Frage nach der Technik, falls into this post-war period. Here, Heidegger applies his cognitive metaphysics to that which he sees as an extension of it, by asking not, like we're used to, for technology as a thing, morally neutral subject that we use, but what defines it, a mindset, a way of seeing and thus shaping the world. He begins by stating that the traditional definition of technology, while technically correct, does not quite capture the truth. Indeed, technology is a means to an end, instrumental, and human activity, anthropological. But the essence of technology, that which makes it what it is and defines our relation to it, is itself by no means anything technological, which is to say not just a means to an end. Were it so, we would be stuck in seeing technology instrumentally, only by measure of itself. We could never shake off our dependency on it. And the answer to our question, to all questions actually, would always be more technology, better technology, faster technology. Like we see it today when applying technological answers to a climate crisis that was itself caused by human technology. So in order to find an answer that allows us to relate to technology on the basis of freedom, we need an outside view, which is why Heidegger looks to philosophy, history, art. In the ancient Greek understanding of technique as the fundament of art, Heidegger finds not only the origin of what modern technology has become, but also that there is more to it than just producing things. For with the words of Plato, of anything whatever that passes from not being into being, the whole cause is poetry, or rather poiesis, the composing of art, the act of creation. The Greek techne, from which our word technology is derived, originally denotes not an object, but a skill or capability of the artist, the technique, artistry, craftsmanship, or expertise which defines the work of art produced. Thus, as art imitates nature as a way of bringing forth something into being, it becomes akin to philosophical understanding, a poetic revealing, entbergen, of a previously invisible truth. Ancient Greek aletheia, the word for truth, literally meaning unconcealment of being. But as the example creation of the silver chalice shows, this is still far from technology as we know today. Whereas the ancient silversmith gathered a fourfold causality, a nod to Aristotle's metaphysics, of material, form, and of purpose and effect, he himself becomes part of the process, not only as the cause of motion, but also by his essence as an artist that is in turn defined by his work. As causation implies responsibility, Greek aitia also meaning guilt, the power to create comes with a calling to care for the world that we share not. Modern technology, by contrast, seems to have lost this connection and become a threat. But as Heidegger writes, this threat to humanity does not come in the first instance from the potential lethal machines and apparatuses of technology. The actual threat has already afflicted humanity in its essence. The rule of enframing threatens humanity with the possibility that it could be denied to him to enter into a more original revealing and hence to experience the call of a more primal truth. What does that mean? Based on modern physics as an exact science, and vice versa, depending on technology for conducting experiments, technological knowledge is a means to power over nature, as one of the most prominent quotes of Sir Francis Bacon, 40K and elsewhere goes. He did well. However, modern technology retains from its roots in ancient technique that it still is a way of revealing, of understanding, and thus shaping the world. merely has become very narrow, some would say effective, in its purpose and function. Some clever etymologies of the German word stellen, to set up, order, challenge, which do not translate that well into the English language. Heidegger calls it enframing, a Gestell, a framework of understanding that allows for only one specific technological kind of revealing the world as a resource, stock, or standing reserve, German Bestand, of power. As an example, Heidegger describes how the Rhine River has been changed from a mythical being and source of artistic inspiration to nothing more but a source of energy by a power plant built around it. Technological enframing thus reduced its essence to a means. To what end? What do we need the energy for? To power more technology, of course. And thus, the circular nature of the Gestell is revealed as a means without end, self-reproducing but ultimately senseless embodiment of Nietzsche's will to power that continues to assimilate and exploit nature as a resource until nothing is left but itself to consume. The true threat, however, lies in the obscuration of the process of revealing itself. Threats where enframing holds sway, regulating and securing of the standing reserve mark all revealing. They no longer even let their own fundamental characteristic appear, namely this revealing as such. So as the instrumental reason of technology reveals the world only as a resource to be exploited, alternative causalities are subsumed under its singular function, until there is no other way left to see the world. Once in, there's no way out. At last, that which defines us most as human beings is turned against us. As we resign to seeing ourselves through the lens of technological instrumentality only, humanity too becomes standing reserve, human resource, as a means and nothing but a means to no end. Heidegger could not quite imagine that last step to come to pass, but in the grim darkness of the far future, it already has. Warhammer 40K allows for a fictional third moment of comparison. Here, technological knowledge has become lost, withered, and atrophied, while its applications run rampant. What little remains is known as Archeotech, a word that shows its roots in Archeos, Archaeos, ancient, old, original, antiquated, and the corresponding noun Arche, whose many translations include beginning, origin, first principle or essence, and certainly not least, power, authority. Lexicanum defines Archeotech as the imperial term given to ancient finds of technical artifacts, which the tech priesthood of the Adeptus Mechanicus is, of course, particularly interested in, most notably those holy relics of almost mythical status called standard template STC consoles. These complex analytical and processing programs may be once actual artificial intelligence, later abhorred as abominable intelligence, were created during the peak but now bygone dark age of technology, and are said to have contained the entirety of human technological knowledge up to that time. Fragmented and mostly lost during the old night of the Age of Strife, they are the primary focus of the Adeptus Mechanicus quest for knowledge ever since. With Heidegger in mind, this means that technology in the 41st millennium is not originally created anymore. Innovation is considered a sin, actually, but it refers to something that is already there, knowledge as Bestand, or standing reason. To further confirm this suspicion, let's have a look at the fundamental tenets of the religion that evolved around those relics of technology, the 16 universal laws of the cult Mechanicus, not all of them, containing mysteries as well as warnings. The fourth universal law establishes how the understanding of knowledge, which we identified as a revealing of standing reserve, defines the essence of the tech priest purely by its capacity. But understanding is not enough. The sixth universal law denotes it as but a means to the end that is comprehension. The Latin word comprehendo, literally meaning to grasp the power contained within knowledge by activating and actualizing its potential as the key to all things. At this point, understanding becomes dogma. As a variant reading of this law from the more recent Wrath and Glory RPG shows by replacing it with the exercise faith. The eighth universal law then continues to substantiate the derivative nature of technology by demarcating the machine godhead as the absolute maximum of knowledge and power, an omniscient messiah, which may or may not be identical with the Emperor of Men. Lastly, a warning. The 13th universal law metaphorically cuts off the roots from under the tree by stating that Archeotech, the knowledge of the ancients, stands beyond question, or even, as the alternate reading goes, beyond comprehension. So, with the fundament of knowledge in the original creative process of revealing forever out of reach, the technological enframing has succeeded in obscuring its own nature, and thus cannot be itself understood or even addressed as such anymore, becomes invisible. It cannot be criticized, for all the alternatives have been eliminated as tech heresy, particularly the poetic way of bringing forth primordial truth into reality. Without epistemology, however, science is become ignorance. Technological revealing is now absolute. In conclusion, the last step and ultimate consequence of this process is human being itself becoming technology, and thus a standing reserve of power. For the Adeptus Mechanicus, salvation lies not in the biological, but in a transcendent mystical union with the machine, or in the words of Magos Faustinus from the Mechanicus video game, "From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me. Craved the strength and certainty of steel, I aspired to the purity of the blessed machine." There are numerous examples for this in the grim darkness of Warhammer 40k. First of all, the ubiquitous servitor. Actually not something anyone would aspire to, but rather a sentence for criminals, servitude imperpetuis, lobotomized, cybernetically enhanced, and reprogrammed to serve only specific rudimentary functions. The difference from an augmented tech priest, however, is but one of quantity, of the capacity for knowledge, the level of power, and the multitude of functions, not of quality or essence. Like the tech priest, a servitor is not actually a cyborg in the sense that Donna Haraway described it as an opportunity for the dissolution of antiquated boundaries between humanity and technology. For in the servitor, nothing human is left. Another example is what imperial technology is actually made of: skulls, mostly. Not only the skull throne of the blood god Khorne, but future Gothic architecture everywhere uses the mortal remains of its abundant martyrs as a standing reserve of building material. Where there is only war, human life is the only renewable resource left. Which leads us to my last, but probably not even most horrifying example, which is necrophagia, the eating of the dead. All those skulls and bones have to be picked after all. And in the 41st millennium, this process has long been industrialized to produce the most common food source in the Empire of Man: corpse starch. Of the people, for the people. To modify a well-known TV trope, Soylent's Viridians is people. But that doesn't even bother the average hive citizens, who needs his nutrients for another day of toiling in the manufactorums. He spends his life to become a standing reserve of energy for those who succeed. As a closing thought, I'd like to return to reality, where the grimdark vision of future technology is only a possibility and our actions do change things. But it is possibility, as revealed by art, history, and poetry, that allows us to make decisions based on more than just what meets the eye in the now. For one, the eye cannot see itself, and so it should not surprise us that the idea of holding up a mirror to society, however warped, is actually not that new. The cynic philosopher Diogenes, that's the one living in the barrel, an ancient Greek punk rocker basically, is said to have argued that mythical king Tuestes did nothing wrong when he was tricked into eating his own sons, thus illustrating the absurd consequences of common superstition as well as contemporary philosophical theory. The bite of his critique was meant to better his fellow citizens. Maybe the dystopian horror of Warhammer 40k can do the same for us. Thank you for listening, and now I'm happy to answer any questions if there's still time left.
Yes.